Let's talk about the fourth race on Saturday. This was the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. You had a field of 14 signed on. Post-time favorite was World of Trouble, which realistically shouldn't have been much of a surprise to anyone. World of Trouble was really for the entire week down there in Louisville and clearly everywhere else too. A bit of a buzz horse. The two races he had on turf were both spectacular. He was taking on elders for the first time, so there was no guarantee he'd be able to handle that. And he was taking on just really good horses. You've got a horse like Disco Partner in here. You also had the defending champion of this race in Stormy Liberal. And the question for many of these horses was, how would they handle the ground? Well, I'll tell you what, the top two handled it beautifully and put on an absolute show. Here's the stretch run of this year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint.
Comes Stormy Liberal trying to win it again on the outside as they arrive at the final furlong. They've left the others behind. Stormy Liberal and World of Trouble digs in. These two well clear their competition. Then it's Disco Partner, Will Call, and Chanteline coming to the final 16th. World of Trouble on the outside. Stormy Liberal, heads coming up and down to the wire. Stormy Liberal back to...
Stormy Liberal. He repeats, gets the job done for Peter Miller and company at odds of 7-1. He defeats World of Trouble by a tough fought neck, and then it's 7 1/4 lengths back to Disco Partner, the second choice in this race at odds of 4-1. Ruby Notion, one of the fillies in this spot, runs fourth at odds of 19-1. Let's take a look at Stormy Liberal a little bit more. 12 of 30 lifetime. 9 other times in the money, just under $2 million in career earnings. Owned by Rockingham Ranch and David A. Burnson, LLC. Trained by Peter Miller. Bred by Dapple Bloodstock and Griffin Investments, LLC in Kentucky. Ridden to victory by Drayden Van Dyke. I believe this was his first Breeders' Cup score, Drayden Van Dyke, so congratulations. And take a look at that pedigree. He's by Stormy Atlantic and a Royal Academy mare named Vassar. Now is when things get a little bit interesting here. Stormy Liberal, from a Timeform US standpoint, pace factored in, pace incorporated, earned a 128 Timeform US rating. World of Trouble actually earned a 129. By any stretch of the imagination, those are giant figures for a turf sprint, no question about it. When you flip that and take a look at the buyer side of things, they're off the charts fast. Stormy Liberal, a 119 buyer speed figure, and World of Trouble, a 118. Now, it's a very loose sort of comparison, but we have brought it up in the past. Roughly a 20-point difference usually is a pretty good guideline between the two. You kind of see that with the third-place finisher, Disco Partner, who Timeform earned a 113 pace incorporated number and a 94 buyer. There's about a 20-point difference, more or less, give or take a point or two. With the top two, there's only about a 10-point difference, which leads me to wonder which one is slightly elevated. Is the buyer too high, or is the Timeform US rating too low? We will not know until these horses run back. It is also worth noting that this was run over a pretty significant bog. The top two are very clearly the best horses in the race. There's really no denying that. They worked out beautiful trips. World of Trouble, they went out there. I have to be honest, I said it right after when we were doing the NBC program. I think you could look at the neck margin of victory and say much of that, not much of that, some of that, had to do with where World of Trouble was on the racetrack as opposed to Stormy Liberal. I maintain that the inside is not where you wanted to be on the turf course. We saw that, just evidence of that later on in the day, where the two big fillies in the turf are about 15 paths off the rail. They want no part of the inside. So I give credit to Drayden Van Dyke for hemming Irad Ortiz down there on the inside, but at the same time, Irad was down there on a few different occasions on his mounts. So, maybe, I don't know what to make of that. All I'm saying is this neck margin of victory, I think you could go, if you flipped it the other way and you had World of Trouble on the outside and Stormy Liberal on the inside, I'm not totally convinced that the result is not reversed either. Stormy Liberal, a beautiful trip, sat 3 wide, just off the pace, stalking, went up, loomed, turning for home, and these two threw it down. They finished faster, basically, than everyone else in this field. I have no knocks about either of them. Really, the key and the question for me going forward is going to be, which figures do you really look at and say accurate or not? Because it was so far and away the fastest race from a buyer standpoint of either Stormy Liberal or World of Trouble's career. And real quick, I'm going to pull up the Timeform US rating and just see if these guys had done anything remotely close to those numbers in the past. I would venture a guess and say no, but luckily we have a little bit of help here. We have a computer that can give us some indication. If you look and see, the most recent run for World of Trouble was a 130. He comes back and they assign him a 129 in this spot. Stormy Liberal's run 2 starts back going down the hill was a 123. He earns a 128. those numbers match up quite nicely. From a buyer's standpoint, these numbers are so astronomically high. And look, there's been an article already published on DRF.com that the folks at Buyer Associates, they say no question about it. Very, very confident with these numbers, because you look at Roby Notion, she had run over testing ground up at Saratoga, and she's capable of running somewhere up in the 100 range. It's going to be interesting to see as more time goes by. I'm not saying one way or the other that I think one figure is better than the other, but to be honest, I'm slightly leaning more toward the time form rating at the moment as opposed to the buyer number. And again, we'll only find out in time if those numbers are accurate or not, or they need to be a little bit tweaked here or there. As far as the rest of the field is concerned, Conquest Tsunami, a little bit slow out of the gate from the outside. Don't think he handled the turf course. Richard's Boy's just been off form. Didn't love anything about him coming into it. Bucaro, he got in a little bit tight coming at, about the top of the lane, got pinched around, bounced around. The race was over at that point for him anyway. Will Call trying to come from the back of the pack, not the easiest thing. Disco Partner, if you run this race on a firm turf course, I think he at least performs better than he did in this spot. I think he ran a fine race. Look, he ran a winning race if you take the top two out of it. But the top two are very clearly the two best as far as turf sprinters are concerned here in the United States. It's also worth noting one other horse to throw out. The Chanteline didn't run poorly in the grand scheme of things. She ran 6th, and that was with a shoe replacement happening in the paddock. So a decent enough effort from her. The rest of the field, Rainbow Air, you have to wonder. I mean, look, he had gone and covered 40 mares at one point. I'm not going to hold it against him if he's just not quite the same as a racehorse as he once was. No question about it, though. This was a show from the top two. They were both phenomenal in here, Stormy Liberal and World of Trouble. I personally believe if you reverse where those two horses are on the turf course, if Stormy Liberal is inside and World of Trouble is outside, I think World of Trouble wins. That wasn't the case, though. Stormy Liberal was on the outside. World of Trouble was on the inside. They both put on an absolute show. Stormy Liberal goes back-to-back in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, and all of a sudden, it's been brought up on social media, and I don't think it's a ridiculous notion. Stormy Liberal, if you think that the male turf runners are just it's a total you-know-what show, maybe Stormy Liberal's put together a bit of a compelling campaign. We'll find out. We have plenty of time before we get to the Eclipse Awards. But at the end of the day, he gets the job done. He is a defending Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint champion. When you look at the figures, though, 128 time form U.S. rating for Stormy Liberal, 129 for World of Trouble. Buyers, giant. Stormy Liberal a 119, World of Trouble a 118.